Okay, hello, welcome to a very special interview. You might remember a couple of weeks ago, October the 30th, Jordan Rudess appeared at the Build conference, which is the Microsoft Developer Conference, sort of showing his applications on the Windows 8, at least I assume it's Windows 8 devices. And we're very fortunate to have both Jordan and Kevin Chartier, who is the sort of technical coding side of things, to join us today. And I wanted to quiz them a little about this because they, as far as I can tell, seem to be amongst the first, if not the first, people to actually get the whole Windows 8 thing going on. So first of all, Jordan, if I could maybe come to you, what was the spark or the trigger for this? I mean, when did you think I really need to do this?
Well, Kevin and I put together these apps that we were very proud of, that we wanted to get out to the world, and of course, the iOS world was the way that we got our whole business started. Very smooth, very cool. But our desire was to get our work out to as broad an audience as possible. I mean, really, why not? So Kevin came to me at one point and said, look, he says, with the kind of code I do, I can take these apps and I can move them to other platforms. I said, well, wonderful, let's do that. So we've actually been experimenting with releasing our apps on some other platforms. And, I don't know if people out there, well, some of them don't know it, but like MorphWiz is available on the Android platform. MorphWiz is available in the BlackBerry Playbook.
I did not know that, no.
Yeah, so we put them out on that platform, and now with Windows, I honestly have to say that I'm kind of the next level of excited about it because we've had some problems, with the Android platform. There are two problems. One of which is that there's an inherent audio latency issue, which when you touch the screen, the sound doesn't happen right away, which is, of course, from a musical point of view, not acceptable. We felt like our apps were still fun and musical, so we released them on that platform anyway. But, to get to the point, with Windows, their system is such that, it's much more like a musical instrument where you press the note and it plays. I don't know if Kevin's done a measurement of the exact latency yet, but it really is very similar to the iOS response. So we feel like, wow, this is an opportunity to release our instruments in the proper form to a whole nother audience. Because as we know, there's a lot of people that are Windows, Microsoft people that, don't want to go out and get, an iPad or an iPhone. So for me, it's very exciting because we get to have our apps out there in just a broader segment of the population.
I can imagine. And also, I mean, the thing that was more thrilling, one of the most thrilling things is you just kind of casually throw in, I've got a 27-inch touchscreen kind of input device here, which is kind of like, wait, hold on, now that really does get kind of very exciting, right?
Oh, well, as a musician, I'm like, oh my God, that's like a dream come true. I've wanted to play on a large touchscreen since we thought of these apps. That's been kind of like the goal. So when Pete Brown called me up and said, hey, we have this system and you can play it on any size screen, and, I'm going to bring over a 27-inch screen for you to play on, I was like, wow, let's make this happen. This is awesome.
And is that size still enable you to have this low latency interfacing with it?
That's a very good question. It seems like the different screens are all a little bit different, I guess because they're made from different companies, and Kevin maybe can fill us in on what's going on to, why that's happening. However, the one that I have at home, the Lenovo machine, it's not the most responsive to my touch. I mean, it's really fun to play, and it's, it's exciting. However, the apps don't work exactly like what I'd want them to, how I'd want them to respond. When I was when I was over at Microsoft, I was playing on some other screens. I played on this huge Sony tablet that looks like somebody injected an iPad with some kind of
growth hormone.
that actually responded really, really well.
That casual line of Jordan's, "Oh, I've written the code so that it's easy to port to other platforms," is a very simple set of words, but actually is a hugely meaningful statement, right?
It it is, and it's what really gave rise to all of this is that we found on iOS that the native windowing toolkit was eating so much of the CPU, eating so much of the processor that we couldn't do the synthesis we wanted to. So
Ah,
starting with Sample Wiz, I wrote a basically my own windowing toolkit to ditch Apple's windowing toolkit. And on any device, you have the CPU, you have the GPU. And basically what we did is with starting with Sample Wiz, we offloaded as much of the visual code to the graphics processor, the GPU. So as much of the CPU as possible would be available to do audio synthesis. After we finished Sample Wiz, I started looking at, I started out as a Windows developer, and I've developed Linux applications, I've developed Windows applications, mostly Windows applications for most of my career. And I realized that this windowing toolkit was a big step to having cross-platform applications. So when Windows Consumer Preview came out, I actually, and I was playing around a lot with a bunch of different devices before this. I got a couple of Android devices, like Jordan said, we got the playbook, but actually the Windows was before we even started messing with the playbook. And basically what we have is I set things up so that I can write code that instead of the application code ever dealing directly with the operating system and with operating system specific libraries, the application code deals with an interface that I wrote. And all I have to do is for any new platform, I have to write a new backend for that interface to interface.
Is that the idea? If I'm not terribly up to speed, is that the idea of like a meta compiler? Is that the idea of something that a layer that you just spit out different languages? Kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of the same idea, but on the interface level. Yeah, basically the whole idea is that you have your, on one end you have your application, and a typical application, and this is the way development is typically encouraged. You have your application has all of these hooks going into the operating system and things that are very specific to operating systems. And honestly, it's worse now than it was years ago. Cross-platform development used to be a little more encouraged than it is now. And basically what I did is I put up a wall there and said, you know what, I'm not going to have my application know anything really about the operating system. My application is going to know about this interface that I've put in between.
Right. I mean, this sounds actually quite groundbreaking in a lot of ways, because I mean, one of the big sort of exciting parts for me of this is, and it's a sort of theory I expanded when I was talking about your appearance at the developer conference, Jordan, was the idea that a lot of these people who are developing technology maybe are thinking from a kind of office and business user point of view, but actually what they really need is musicians to push the boundaries, because nobody's going to go, wow, check that spreadsheet out. They're going to go, wow, look at this instrument, look at this real-time kind of stuff. And so therefore this is very, very critical to the whole momentum that a new platform like this would build, right?
Totally. I was very, so excited. I am excited to be involved with Microsoft on this level at this point. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day. He's saying, "Oh, well," I was being very positive, optimistic about the whole thing. They were saying, "Well, Microsoft released, Windows 7. They released Vista. It was all, supposed to be very exciting. So let's see." I'm like, "Well, okay." I said, "But here we are with this release, and they called me. So, I'm relating it to my life at, this time, the synchronicity of all that. And so I'm going to be excited. I think this move of Microsoft's to not only release, this particular software, but to have somebody like me come out and be the opening act for Steve Ballmer is a strong statement.
Yeah.
Well, it's really pretty cool. I mean, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and went, wow, things are really changing. This is amazing that Microsoft would have you come and do this kind of, rock show or whatever before their build conference.
8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm sure, our friends at Apple were kind of like, wow, that's that's pretty interesting. It's so different. It's a big statement. It's, where all of a sudden they're like embracing, you know,
Yeah.
creative elements.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, I mean, the critical thing now, presumably, is obviously, Kevin, you've got this amazing workflow that allows you to cross-platform develop. I mean, in terms of getting other, because the critical thing now is getting other iOS developers on board who have come up with these wonderful ways of using the touch, that we can all kind of relate to and all go, wow, this is cool stuff. I know, Jordan, you're very quick to sort of say that is a very cool app, and sort of evangelize it. I mean, how can it move on from here? How easy is it for these guys to then to port?
That's an awesome question. I'm interested to hear Kevin's answer, but I just want to say, yeah, there has been so much excitement with iOS because although 95% of the apps that, let's say, I get excited about, they're not like the all-end great musical creations, but they might have a seed of an idea that's really, really cool. They might be showing me something that we haven't really thought of before, a new way to control sound, which you go, wow, that's really awesome. But I have the feeling, and Kevin will clarify, that many of these programmers are using tools that are kind of like not the foundation tools. They're things that are available to them on an easier level to plug into and make little things happen that might be of interest.
And that's the key, obviously. How do they translate that?
So I want to add to your question, like how many tools like that we're kind of enjoying as users or as musicians are available even on the Windows platform to make use of to open up the same kind of creativity? How is the world different in that? In that Windows world area.
Over to you.
There you go.
Well, basically, when you're looking at developing for a platform, you have a set of graphical elements and a set of things built into the operating system that you can use to develop. And with Apple, of course, they developed some neat touch controls. Personally, I like our touch controls a whole lot better than the ones that Apple developed even for their devices. If you look, for example, if you look at Apple's sliders, I find them very difficult to use. You see people on their iPhones hunting and pecking around at their sliders. You look at the slider toolkit that I developed, and it's easy to use. You will never find somebody hunting and pecking to figure out how to use one of our sliders because it really is just a better design. But basically, and this is even talking with our friends at Microsoft, they brought me through the whole tutorial and they were talking about all of these wonderful ways to design interfaces and all of these great tools that they had developed. And what's interesting about the system that I work in, and there are a lot of different kinds of programmers, a lot of different levels of comfort with using technology. Microsoft has developed a lot of wonderful tools for developing interfaces, for developing applications. Apple has developed a lot of wonderful tools for developing interfaces and for developing applications. The problem is they're totally different sets.
They're incompatible. I mean, the thing that is the key to this is whether somebody or whether there is a will within Microsoft or whoever to create some way of kind of going, created a great iOS app, want to do something for the Windows thing. What you need is this widget, which we'll seed you with. You can have it. All you have to do is this, and this will get you going on the road. Obviously, it's not going to be as simple as that, but we are trying to make it as simple as possible.
And I don't think that either Microsoft or Apple is going to step up and offer something like that. There are a lot of third-party companies that provide things like that. The problem is with those, you usually add a level of abstraction on top of the native toolkits.
Sure.
And all of them that I've seen, they basically do that. They add a level of abstraction on top of the native toolkits, and they add a level of inefficiency. What's really remarkable about the way we do things, and this is not something totally new, and I'll explain how other people have done this before. But what we do is we actually remove a level of inefficiency. We remove a level of complexity, and the way that I write code for these systems, it's still all native code for these systems. There's no additional abstraction layer in terms of some kind of toolkit or some kind of other language you have to use in between.
Right.
What I'm adding in between is just a programming interface, basically, and it's all. If you look at my application code, it is 100%. It's not even C++. It's not Objective-C. It's C. It's so incredibly simple. It's a language that's been around as long as I've been alive, has been standardized for as long as I've been alive. And that's a big deal.
Well, it sounds like you are the guy who needs to make this thing. Then but I mean, obviously that introduces all sorts of other questions into the equation, not in terms of intellectual property, time, all that kind of things. But I mean, because I'm guessing, Jordan, you don't want to be the only guy who's able to be developing this. I mean, what can be done to encourage this process?
Of course not. Yeah, I'm excited about seeing this world take off. That's why I'm listening as intently as anybody else right now to what Kevin is saying, trying to understand how possible it is for our other friends who make cool stuff to actually do something on Windows. Obviously, I know that Kevin is the kind of programmer. I've met enough programmers now to start to really see the difference. I mean, Kevin goes down to the root level. He understands how to make code from the beginning. Right. And to build the tree from the start to the finish, where, I'm sure 95% of programmers don't program like that. They just don't know how. They don't have the patience. It's 2012. People don't want to do all that study and that work. It's the same for musicians. They don't want to sit down. They don't want to practice and learn to play every scale and every arpeggio in every key, backwards and forwards. They just don't want to. They're going to go and they're going to sequence it, or they're going to use tools to, arpeggiators to get their, fast runs done. I think it's very similar.
At this point in the show, we want to say thank you to Yamaha for being one of the show sponsors. They have a whole bunch of applications. There's over 20 music-related applications. You see them here in this lovely spinny globe. We've got performance play, we've got keyboard, arp and drum. There's also the new one, which is the synth arp and drum pad, which has software synthesizer with 61 sounds, 7 kits and effects, 5 songs, 16 drum pads. There's also faders and XY power, which allows you to connect up to your Mox, Motif XX, S90SX, S70XS, Motif XS and Rack XS, and access the various parameters for performance such as filters and XY pad, volume and EQ. There's voice editors as well, which allow you to access more detailed voice parameters, EQ, that kind of thing. Lots and lots of ways of controlling your Mox series and Motif series keyboards. And we've also got Setlist Organizer, which we looked at earlier in the series, and this is a great application. What this does is allow you to organize your set, put notes in, photographs, and then send out MIDI program changes and banks for each section of the song to sort of organize your MIDI rig. You can record and share with Cloud Audio Recorder. There's a whole bunch of applications out there in the Yamaha world of apps. Just head over to iTunes and search for Yamaha apps. Just to sort of maybe take a sidestep a minute, these applications are working in Windows 8 proper. It's not RT, so are we going to be able to see them on Surface as well, or is that a totally different machine and what have you?
Jordan demoed them on Surface, and the applications I actually wrote. I wrote this back end of the API. I wrote it for both Windows 7, which runs as a desktop application, and for what Microsoft, I believe, calls the WinRT API. So it will run on, and it's different compilations of it, but it will run on the WinRT, the Windows RT Surface. It will run on an x86, right. Windows 8 as a Metro style app. A different version of the app, which I don't see much reason to release this, will run as a desktop application on either Windows 7 or Windows 8. And actually, I compiled it for Windows XP, where you can use it with a mouse.
That's exciting. I mean, does that mean, because I've been hearing, I listen to the Twit Network, which is a great kind of tech resource, and they've been getting the Surface, and their sense is that it's quite laggy. But is that because you've removed this level of abstraction and interfaces, does that mean that you're able to get it to respond better for your specific application?
It is an ARM processor, which there are definitely issues with, and I love ARM processors. I think they're really cool, almost as much fun as well. Yeah, no, ARM processors are awesome. So you have less computational power available than if you're running on an x86 processor, but you can still get very good latency times. Right now, MorphWiz is running with higher latency than we would want. Tachyon, actually, because the synthesis is a whole lot simpler, is running with much better latency than MorphWiz even. And I was actually talking to, I think he emailed me right around the time Jordan did this demo, a friend of ours who does the Nano Studio application. He's basically doing exactly the same thing that I'm doing.
That's way cool, because that was a real kind of one of the groundbreaking applications for iOS, wasn't it? The Nano Studio. So that is really good. And he's from around here. He's like 20 miles up the road, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you should talk to him, because he actually released a version of Nano Studio, a free version. You can go to the website and download it for free and play with it. He released a free version of Nano Studio for Windows 7.
Wow.
And he is working on a version of Nano Studio for Windows 8, and he actually gave me some pointers on how to reduce latency, because I was telling him how I was doing things, and he mentioned to me that there were ways to improve. So,
well, that's good. I mean, that's a kind of good sign that the community, because that's essentially what needs to happen, isn't it? Jordan, were you holding up a Surface there? Because I must say the Surface does look like a really cool piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's cool. That's running Tachyon, right?
Yeah, that's right. It runs beautifully.
That's sweet. So, I mean, because one of the things is, I'm actually really excited by the Surface. I would love to try one out and get one in, and use it, because we have a Sonic Touch program where we review applications for touch devices. It's mostly iOS, because that's all there's been. But the Surface actually looks like a really cool piece of hardware. I mean, you've got one in your hands. I mean, is there anything else that you can download to it to fulfill your creative desire other than the stuff you make yourself?
Yeah, well, I just got it, so I haven't done a lot of research about what else is available yet. So I can't really answer that question. I know there's not a whole lot available at this moment.
A standard USB connector.
Yes,
Woohoo!
I'm happy to have it, because first of all, it plays well for me, and just as you said, it's a pretty cool piece of hardware. It's a great screen. It's a really cool size. It just feels good to play, and yeah.
I guess the thing that's quite thrilling about this also is, obviously Apple has their roadmap, and they tend to iterate their products geared purely around sales and how much of a bump will bite. If something is only a tiny bit better, we might not buy it, but if it's just enough better to make us buy it, then they get more sales. Whereas we're actually kind of, as musicians and users, we want, as fast as possible, as soon as possible. And Windows, this seems to be an exciting possibility to access this high-speed processors right away. I mean, that's the thing. It's the "I want it now" kind of scenario, isn't it? I mean, that's the thrilling part, right? So, do you get the sense that they have they have and are prepared to push the resources into this zone, because traditionally they're going to be concentrating on the corporate users and that sort of, and this is very much more consumer based, isn't it? This is a different sort of strategy for them. Do you get the sense that there's going to be enough people there to help out?
I guess I guess time will tell, but I mean, it seems like they're really into it. They're very excited. That, of course, they have lots of resources, so we will hope that they make it happen.
Most definitely, most definitely. And Kevin, you obviously with a background in Windows, you now must be seeing, ooh, actually, this means so much more is possible. And I guess that you're feeding back this knowledge to Jordan, who's also presumably seeing, oh, wait a minute. I thought that, now we can really kind of let rip. I mean, do you think that's a viable thing? Are you going to be kind of really pushing the boundaries now?
I think that there are some really interesting opportunities with Windows, and um, both the fun and the not so fun part is the diversity of Windows devices that are out there and are going to be out there. And the good thing is that even the lowest processing power Windows devices that are going to be out there, and this is, that's going to be the Surface. It's an ARM processor, which is a very efficient processor, but in terms of total computational power is going to be less than an x86 processor these days. So if you want an app that will run all the way from a Windows Surface to the highest powered x86 machine that they're going to release, then you are going to need to be thinking about a wide range of computational power available. And of course, when somebody has a more powerful processor, they want an app that's going to take advantage of that.
Sure.
And especially when it comes to synthesis, and I find it kind of funny when you look at the level of quality that's accepted in iOS synthesizers right now, just because they're running on ARM processors. People are synthesizing at 16-bit 44.1 and not even doing a very, like, you look at iOS apps, you hear aliasing all over the place. What I find really amusing is if you released a serious, called yourself a serious synthesis app and released a PC application, 6-7 years ago, you would be laughed at if you had the quality of synthesis that you hear in a lot of iOS synthesizers. One thing that I think this will do, but people accepted it because it's so portable and because you have this touchscreen. One thing that I think it will do is that it will raise the standard for audio quality, where we're going to start to get the consumers of these applications are going to realize that they can start to be a little pickier about synthesis quality again, which is a good thing. It's good to have discerning users who actually want a quality product and want, even though it's fun, it's also something that you want to have good sound coming out of it, and you want to have it.
Yeah. I could see what you're saying there. Sorry, Jordan, you want to come in?
And that brings up the whole other, kind of relates to the whole other problem in this whole world, which will be interesting to see how the Microsoft Windows environment kind of maybe changes the whole scope of it. Which is that we kind of emerged in this multi-touch music world at a point where there weren't that many things going on, and we were able to offer something and have it really be noticed. And I think what we offered was really was of good quality. And so I think what's been happening is all of us have been seeing this, like the iOS world get more and more crowded, whether it's in music or whether it's in art or photography or any of the different, categories. And at this point, it's like a zoo. It's really, really hard for anyone to know what's a good app, what's not a good app. There's just too much stuff. I look at it and go, oh my God, it's like so overwhelming. And as this was happening, I was thinking, wow, I would love to, kind of like be the one to go in, and not that I have all the time in the world, but I'd love to be the one, since I'm checking all of them out anyway, because I want to see what everybody is doing and have a broad view of what's possible. To say, well, this one is absolute garbage. This one is okay, but this one actually has some real meaning to it. This is a great idea, but it doesn't sound very good. This one is a great idea and does sound really good. How do you navigate a world that has 50,000 music apps?
Well, I can. So I can. This is where, at which point I can plug our Sonic Touch app program, which does its little as best we can. I mean, we don't get to shoot it all that often because of just logistical issues. But we're going to be shooting some more this week. But yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's perhaps one of the things about the whole App Store environment. It's kind of grown from something that was literally a place to buy MP3s into something much more encompassing, and it's actually quite hard, I agree, to see what's going on there, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Speaking of stores, I mean, can we buy your Windows apps now? Are they going to be, or are they still kind of coming to?
I think we're, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 or 4 weeks away from being actually on the store, because we're just submitting now, and it takes a little time to get into the system.
Yep.
So similar process, right? So approval. So you have approval and
well, Pete Brown, my good friend over at Microsoft, can tell everybody more about that. But my understanding is that you can kind of get into the store as a developer in a couple of ways. One of them is a little bit more complicated than the other. One is if you're opening up like a business account,
right?
That's the way that takes more time.
Yeah.
Another way is just to go in as if you're like a single developer and you're just doing something like a one-off or whatever, and then it's a lot easier. The process that we did, because we're taking this very seriously, is we opened up a business account for Wizdom Music.
Sure.
So there were some steps that relate, that kind of relate to the iOS world, maybe even a little bit more intense. But Microsoft is coming from a business background, so they want business accounts to be very secure. They take it very seriously, and I think that's why there's a little bit more to get into it.
And are you planning on, is it going to be comparative sort of pricings? I mean, I guess there's profit splits and all the kind of business side is going to be there or thereabouts the same, right?
Yeah. We haven't totally determined the pricing yet, but it'll be somewhat related.
I think the big question of this is whether Windows is going to become a viable platform for music apps, and whether a lot of the excitement that was previously restricted to iOS for music apps is going to move over to the Windows space. And if you really look at the excitement, it's not that difficult to understand why it was there. It was a platform that people had the devices, the touch screens were good. They were, iOS devices were the first consumer touch screens that were actually any good. And then you had because it was built on Mac OS, you had a good audio system that gave you low latency. So,
well, and you also have a community of creative people who've been using Apple,
But most of the developers I know, and it may just be my own little corner of the world, like Rob Fielding, the guy who started GeoSynth, the guy we developed GeoSynth with. It was his application initially. It arose out of his musician application, and then we worked with him on it for a while and released it under Wizdom Music. He's a Windows developer. Right. I was a Windows developer. I became an iOS developer. I knew nothing about Objective-C, had not owned a Mac in years, and was writing scientific software for Windows. And I bought a Mac and an iPod Touch just because I saw how exciting the space was. And then the Nano Studio guy does Windows stuff as well. And I don't know if he started in Windows or whether, but he's very capable with Windows actually.
So I feel a whole kind of series of T-shirts, Windows programmers do it better, this kind of stuff coming along.
It seems like there's like the new breed of programmers that the new breed of the ones that say, oh well, I really want to learn how to program for the iPhone.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the serious guys who've been doing this for years. Many of them are
starting out are Windows based. So what's next for you guys? I mean, obviously the world's your oyster at the moment. I mean, there's a sort of blank page in many respects. What are your immediate plans, if you can tell me without having to kill me, of course?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. We are a small but mighty company. We have all these apps out with iOS that we're very excited about, that we need to continue with, but at the same time, right now we're working on a project with Intel and getting that done. We have this adventure that we're starting with Microsoft, getting our apps out on that platform. So, and you're looking at our, main programmer right now,
Sure.
the technical guru of the company. So it's a question of, okay, we've got all these ideas, but taking our time, finishing this thing, and then, maybe moving on to the other thing. What I'm really looking forward to in all this is getting back to some of the very cool things that we started, some apps that we kind of planted seeds for and even got pretty far into, and getting those out. We've got some cool stuff that I'd love to see released.
I'm guessing that this newfound technical possibility, newfound power, if you like, CPU cycles available to you, means that some of the ideas that maybe started out and go, well, that's not quite ready for, the world's not quite ready for this yet. Maybe now you can start to bring those out. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of. It's I think it's no secret that like a while back we showed a version of like Morph Wiz MIDI, that we were working on. There are things that we've done that would be really nice to get back into, that I think we were both looking forward to having some time to sink back into. I'm talking for Kevin now. Wondering if
I think is this turning into a meeting?
What do you think? What you do? What Wizdom music is very much what you see, but the other part of it is that we're starting to open up and working with some other developers. So while this is going on, I'm like working on a little ear training app with a guy in Chile, and there's some other projects that we'll see come to life.
So if I'm an iOS app developer, I've maybe built one or two apps. What's my next move if I want to get into the Windows thing? Do you think?
Well, honestly, what I would like to tell a lot of iOS app developers is. And this I think is a huge problem on all levels with programming, and it's something that I was stuck with for a little while, even when I started programming. There's never any magic to it. All of the stuff that programmers rely on as a crutch because they think it's too hard to do, to dig one level deeper. Get over it. You're a programmer. You need to learn how to make a computer do what you want it to do. And basically, if you're determined enough, you can always get a computer to do what you want it to do. And the more layers of abstraction and the more crutches you use to prop you up to make your life easier, the more difficulty you're going to have in the long run. It's not, I do enjoy, just on an intellectual level, I enjoy the really low level programming. But I don't do low-level programming in C just because I enjoy it. I do it because it's the right way to get the job done. And if I used some system that would make me, it bugs the heck out of me when somebody says, "Oh, you can write an app in 2 hours." I don't want to write an app in 2 hours. I want to write a good app. And any app that you write in 2 hours is either going to be some canned thing that was already basically provided by the operating system. It's just right. I think that developers, if you want to be serious about developing good applications, you have to be serious about building your skills, and you have to be serious about really being a programmer. And
Professor Chartier, I guess, and I totally can appreciate and also relate to everything that Kevin just said, and I hope that message goes out to the programming community in a big way. But I think one of the realities of our business and our world is that like Microsoft is only gonna see a whole lot of apps if they have the tools, which I don't know if Kevin knows, for these programmers to take the easier route. Not that I'm encouraging it in any way, because I think they should all learn how to really program.
But yes, isn't that why iOS apps have blossomed, because there has been that route and it needs to be created.
Yeah, because there are so many tools that they can go in and they can make an app, even if they're not Kevin Chartier.
Sure.
And again, I'm not encouraging it, but I think that there are ways to make, kind of cool music apps without having to get as deep.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that that is possible as well, because obviously, those also encourage you to dig deeper because it doesn't quite do what you want. You can kind of go, well, actually, I need to learn a bit more so I can make it deeper. So that's great.
I mean, one of the things that's just to maybe close, one of the things that's very beautiful about this world of multi-touch is that you have future programmers like Elijah, Kevin's son. What I was going to say is that these platforms, they enable people, the public, to put their hands on musical experiences like they never have before, to enable the guy across the street who loves music that could never play music to put his hand on the surface and make a beautiful sound. We're offering tools, we're offering apps to be able to give music to a large portion of the population, which is the beauty of this whole thing. So if we can get, a surface out there, a 27-inch touchscreen, we can get all these things out there to people to give them a little bit of the magic of music, even if they're not necessarily the deepest of apps. I think it's a wonderful thing. So we can only hope that the Microsoft world expands and we can get some of this magic out there for all those people, because it's only a good thing for the whole world. It really is. Music is a healer. So the more ways that we can get it out there, the more platforms, the better. Not to mention it's going to be fantastic for all the people, all the developers who are doing these creative things that need to make a living.
Absolutely. That's very well said. It's been a fascinating insight into the way this whole thing works, because, I mean, this is, as I said, and as I think we all kind of agree on this, it's an exciting potential possibility. There could be some great stuff coming, and we only hope that it can continue along this line, and things can keep going, and you can bring some enthusiasm to perhaps some of the other iOS developers to join you in a kind of community sense.
Look out for Nano Studio. I think that's going to be a really big one, and that's just a wonderful application. I do also know I was in touch with Rob, and he bought a development system and a Microsoft Surface. Rob Fielding, the guy who wrote GeoSynth. So look out for some cool stuff coming from his direction as well. And he's, in terms of creating really playable instruments, he is obsessive about latency. He's obsessive about playability. So he's a good guy to have excited about the space.
Yeah. The other thing, I wanted to add something just to this whole conversation, which is really important to this, whether or not Microsoft will kind of succeed in opening up their world and having lots of great music apps. And that is that one of the really important things for developers is that they can actually make money from their hard work.
Sure.
And, in our experience now, we've released iOS apps, we've released Android apps, we've released apps for the Playbook. And honestly, the only area that we've been really able to feed our children with is iOS. So, and we could have a whole nother discussion on why that is, but obviously there's a whole lot of people out there, whether it be Jordan Rudess or Wizdom music bands, that are running around with MorphWiz on their device, but for some reason that's not contributing to the cause. So we really are hoping, and it makes a huge difference to where we put our limited resources, that we're hoping that the Windows world, Microsoft will be an avenue where we can actually see some return for it.
Well, of course. I mean, and I'm guessing this is another reason why iOS has been so popular, because whether or not you agree with their particular model, it's very clear. It's a closed system. It's the sort of thing that you buy the app, money exchanges hands. It's not easy. It's not an easy system to circumvent unless you're really, really determined. So, I mean, that's something they've also got to get right. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's a big deal. I think once, other developers are always asking me, they're asking Kevin, like, how are you guys doing in that world? How does it work? They know that we put things out on Android. They're like, what happened? What's going on? Did you make any money? And so these things they want to know how to invest their time.
Sure.
So if we come back to them being one of the first people to enter into the Windows world, and we can say, you know what? We put our app out on the Microsoft platform and it's really working.
Well, let's hope so. I amen to that. I totally agree, and I would. I am totally behind you 100%, and I wish you the very best of luck in that process. And hopefully, Jordan, you'll be also posting some other cool apps of Windows and Surface app music apps that you put up on YouTube, so we can continue to see your excellent playing and what have you.
I totally look forward to that. That would be great.
So, Jordan Rudess and Kevin Chartier, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate you giving your time to talk to us about the whole Windows process. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Nick.
So much.
All right, it's a pleasure.